Hello, good morning, everyone, and a belated happy Christmas for those of you who celebrated a few days ago. We are live again at our usual time of not really 7:30 because we had a bit of a chat before about county
We
council.
were here at 7:30 though, weren't we? We tried, but then we got chatting in behind the scenes. So
Exactly, like we did. We are starting a bit late, but never mind. I doubt many people will be awake. Although I see like some people viewing already, so that's good. We're not the only people being awake at this time on what is a holiday week for most people. So we have coffee here, which is my favorite cup. I'm not a morning person, even if I wake up at 6 o'clock every day. We have buses as well today. So after this call, I'm doing the trip to Newmarket actually via Cambridge. So I'll try two different buses.
how
After
long is that going to take? Estimated.
estimated, I think it's about 3 hours in total because you have to, basically get the bus where you change in Cambridge Central, and it's a bit of a wait in between, and then you take the number 11 from Drummer Street to Newmarket, which is like about an hour. So yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's only two buses, it's only two changes. So for a 40-minute drive, it takes 3 hours to the bus. So or 35-minute drive.
Lots of productive time though that you can use on the bus.
Yes, I am actually doing some admin work on the bus. Because some people I do work today, so it's quite good because I can do some stuff. So we have coffee, we have buses, and we have today a review of politics in 2023 in Cambridgeshire. Are you doing any bus routes today, Stephen, or have you done
Not
any?
today. I'm still on my staying at home and trying not to go out kind of mode for which is what I like to do because I have to go up every single day during the regular year, and so having some time when I can stay at home with my family just feels nice actually. So I'm going to try and avoid going outside apart from to walk the dogs later.
Well, that's good. It's good to have some relaxing time before the very intense period in council starts. So, okay, welcome everyone to the live stream. If you have any comments or questions or your best and worst moments of 2023 in Cambridgeshire politics, please do add them in the comments wherever you're watching, and they will all appear here on our end. So we'll be able to read some of the comments and respond to some of them as well. So we'll start with this question. I thought to do like a kind of a light review of politics without too much politics, but maybe some political comments of the year 2023 in Cambridgeshire. What is the best and worst moment? I know it's a very difficult question because there are many very good moments in Cambridgeshire politics and probably many bad moments as well this year. So, Stephen, what is let's start with the positive, the best moment of this year in
So,
politics?
so obviously for me, it was getting my council tax reform thing through at HDC last month as well, which we cut the maximum amount of council tax payable by the least well off in our community as well. Which that's been a project that's been going on for a year behind the scenes. Lots of back office stuff, lots of calculations. And when we first started looking at it in November 2022. It looked like a massive process because it's not even defining the scheme, is you have to get it through all the governance processes as well. So we have things like we have to go through overview and scrutiny. We have to get through various stages of approval, and that seemed like a big ask a year ago. But we managed to do it ahead of time, I think, and so I'm very proud to get that through because that's something that's going to make a real difference in the life of everyday people, almost immediately, or at least from April. And that's part of the issue with politics is getting anything done that makes a big difference in people's lives. It's kind of hard, isn't it? It really is. And it takes, more often than not, we end up sitting around and talking about things and talking about principles. But that was one thing that I managed to do, which I think is going to have a real effect on the people who need it the most. How about you?
I think it is based on what you said, that often it takes so long to actually do something, even something like very small, like when I promised my residents, for instance, well, this estate footpath will be fixed. It's on the list of resurfacing, and then you have to wait, 2 years later. Here it is, and by the time it's actually done, you say like, well, I can't believe this was done. This footpath is actually resurfaced. Like people already like have moved on from that issue, and like of course there are many other issues logged in, so to speak, the backlog of emails. So it's actually quite interesting to think about how once you actually manage to do something that has a change in in people's everyday lives, how is that received? Because by the time you get to that point, it's already kind of forgotten in the cycle of politics in that sense. My best moment, I think, I mean, it's very tempting to say one of my many now. I think I've probably been the councillor who did the most motions with cross-party support in the Cambridgeshire County Council.
And possibly the most motions as well. Probably the most motions in the JA, haven't you?
Yes,
I would guess.
probably, and probably the most that actually received cross-party support, which I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing for like local politics, but I think politically it can be a bad thing as well. But I do see it as a good thing because it's good on certain things, like for example, like access to NHS dentists, like support for local farmers, debate not hating politics. I think it's actually important to have cross-party support. But I think the best moment is actually not, I wouldn't say one of my initiatives or my motions. I would say the best thing for me was actually my colleague Brian's motion on recognizing care experience as a protected characteristic throughout the council. I think that was like probably the best motion debate, in the sense of like in this, the speeches, like obviously hearing directly from people with care experience in the council, and also the kind of, although that doesn't have an impact on a very large group of the population, it's actually very important because as county councillors we're all corporate parents. Obviously I sit on the corporate parenting subcommittee, but not only the people who sit on that subcommittee are have responsibility over that, and I think that's like really important. It does kind of show our, I guess, values as a council and how we should actually recognize that group of people who is particularly disadvantaged through our various systems in society. So I think that was really like a moving debate for me, and probably like one of the good moments in terms of like policy change in the council.
Yeah, and before that one, we had a speech, didn't we, or from a young person, a young female who had been part of the care system, and who talked about all the obstacles that she'd faced in just like living everyday life, which I think was the most powerful speech that any of us have ever heard as well. It's still available. I'll try and link it up on one of our websites later. It's available as part of the recording, but there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and particularly from me, because my son came from the care system as well. My son's adopted, and that was. Yeah, it was really because I understand the disadvantages people get, but also the love that you can get if you're lucky through the foster system and through the adoption system as well. But not everybody's so fortunate as that. So that was an incredible moment, I thought as well. Yeah. So there's been a few of those, haven't there?
Yeah, so Ellie Johnson, actually, one of the things that was good after the motion as well is that Ellie, who spoke as someone with care experience in the council, and you're right to say that all the councillors, actually, it was probably one of the only or very few moments in county council where everyone actually paid attention to a speech, because usually you can see like on the live stream when people don't actually pay attention to each other.
Wow.
Guilty of that as well. But when Ellie spoke with her lived experience, it was really, really moving, and I think everyone did pay attention. And I'm really pleased that Ellie is actually working now with the county council as a project officer as well. So it's actually able to use her lived experience to impact some of our services as a result of that kind of motion as well, and like her involvement in that debate. So that's really, really good to hear. I think it's really important to have like more people with lived experience of like the different policy areas. That's why I'm really pleased as well, like after the immigration support for migrants motion that I did, that we have a migration officer who actually comes from a migrant background as well. I think it's important to have some people with lived experience, whether it's speaking about the care system or our migration policy or like other types of policy areas.
One of the problems with the county council is that we have these debates with the same voices, exactly the same. What is it, 61 voices in county council for 4 years, and that was outside procedure when Ellie spoke. We're not normally allowed to do that as well, and lucky I wasn't the chair because I'm a stickler for process. But Sebastian kindly let it through. And it made a real difference hearing a real person's voice, didn't it? And I think we should have more of that as well. It shouldn't just be us talking about things. It should be about the people who really experience them as well. So that really was a powerful moment.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, because I know it's not normal procedure. But for instance, when I did the motion on NHS dental access, I was quite keen to read some testimonies directly from people, and the group like Toothless in Huntingdon provided me with some real stories from people who struggle to access dental care. So I read them in the speech, but I think it would have been much more powerful to have something like we had on the care experience motion. One of the one resident actually speaking about how difficult it was for them to access dental care, like even if for a minute, like instead of me just kind of summarizing and having the same voices all over again. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm speaking about this issue without necessarily being, I guess, too negatively impacted, probably because I haven't yet reached the stage where I need like any kind of urgent dental care or anything like that, or like NHS access. But for a lot of people, it is like an immediate issue. It's something they face every day. And I think we should listen to more of the voices of people who are directly impacted by the policies that we're commenting on in general. How about we will take Antonio's question about the buses in a minute, but how about the worst moment in politics
So
in
many to choose
2023,
from.
not in
I mean,
general?
I can give you three candidates. I think. I mean, firstly, yeah, I'd say that the process of being a councillor during a time of austerity, when there really isn't much money, and we're trying to cover essential services, and actually, you can only do that if you make cuts elsewhere. Is the truth of it. So that whole frustration is, especially because I go to parish council meetings nearly every week, at least one, sometimes two. And so I have to stand up in front of people and justify all the things we do, which I enjoy doing. So like the three candidates for negativity, obviously in Huntingdonshire, the green bin thing was a hard thing for us to do. It's not something we wanted to do. So we're making people pay for their green bins as well as a way of filling the gap in our funding as well. So that was really difficult. That was hard. But I'm proud that I stood up and did it, and I've been in front of that debate constantly, even going to hostile parish councils and talking to people and having many thousands of conversations on social media. So that was hard, but it was the right thing to do, I think. And then at county council, there was two things in parallel. There was three things probably. So there was the whole of the transportation argument, with the congestion zone, which was a hard thing to be involved with because it was mainly Cambridge centric, and I'm not really a Cambridge politician, but it affected all of our buses as well. And so that was a difficult debate to have because there was people who were very anti it, and also lots of people who were quite pro it, but didn't have a loud enough voice as well. So that was frustrating, but I think it was a good debate and democracy really in action, because actually the majority of people had their way and the whole thing got canned. Similarly with the C2C busway discussion as well, the compromise between putting a improved bus service for people in Camborne who really need it by building a new busway versus the ecological and environmental and biodiversity complaints of demolishing an orchard. That was really difficult. But on those two things, at least, those happened at the same time at County Council. And I had to chair those debates, which were really, really contentious, probably some of the most contentious motions that the council's ever heard, or certainly since I've been involved. And so, we had a packed public gallery. At times it felt quite hostile, but I chaired those meetings and I was proud of the way I chaired those meetings. So the really frustrating thing is I think those things were all interesting, but they were good democracy. The weeds debate at county council was probably the most negative thing as well, because I think it has, it's one of those things that has impacts on residents. It was a bad choice by the joint administration, and one that I think we're in the process of fixing. But that was a hard thing to talk about for me, and because my residents complained to me about it, and I feel like I don't have that much influence, even though I was trying to pull lots of strings behind the scenes as usual. So that's a lot of negativity, but I think it's just that's the reason why we're elected to be councillors, is we're there to make difficult decisions, aren't we? And so it's always going to be biased towards doing those difficult things rather than doing the easy things. How about you?
Well, I think there are a lot of candidates as well to the worst moments, but I think the most difficult moment personally that I found is actually being involved in the budget planning processes. And of course, we'll have the full council in when it is in the winter, like later in the winter in February, discussing when councils have to set a balanced budget by law. As we know, every year we have those budget discussions, debate, to have opposition amendments, and everyone is trying to work out how on earth can we deliver a balanced budget when our central government funding is being reduced in real terms every single year, and when a lot of the costs are increasingly going up, such as some of the construction costs, some of them up to 30%, which obviously affect areas like highways and and many more areas in council services. And I think is not we didn't reach the budget debate yet, because a lot of what people see is, when you get to the budget debate. But of course, you have like a lot of different meetings, readings beforehand, just to prepare for that moment, which started a long time ago. Like we don't just show up before, before the day in February or whatever, and like vote on something. There's a lot of reading and thought going into the different service areas. And I think personally that's something that's really difficult, like personally as well, because I'm, for instance, as the vice chair of communities, and the government, one of the funds that we have used quite successfully to fund free school meals for all holiday for all holidays for children, free school meal vouchers, which obviously sits within the children's committee. It's administered through that, but also some of the household support fund, which allowed payments of around £100 to families and individuals to deal with immediate cost of living issues, as well as more wraparound support of advice in terms of their finances. That funding was called the Household Support Fund, and it's not looking like it will be continued. I mean, there hasn't been any announcement in the autumn budget by government, and there hasn't been any indication it will continue beyond spring 2024, which leaves about a 7 million, like, I guess, hole in the budget. And it's a very difficult choice, because you have to think, as someone who is, working in this policy area, of course, I want to be able to continue like all the anti-poverty work and all the communities work. And you have to think, how else can you bring the money in to fund this work if the central government fund is not continuing? And I think it's a similar story in so many councils, regardless of political color, and it's so similar in like across different service areas. You have like a declining amount of funding from central government, you have increased costs, you have increased demand in the local population, you have, especially for our county council, an increased population which is above the average of the UK population increase as well. So you need more money for services, you need better services, but you just don't have sufficient funds to deliver it. And I think it's really interesting, it's very difficult, because of course I speak to residents on the doorstep, and people are saying, well, I'm paying more council tax, like why can't you deliver like better than you have delivered before? And I think it's often, and that's something I haven't understood either before I was elected and before starting reading this stuff, is that most of our council tax goes to children's and adult social care. It actually doesn't go to highways, it doesn't go to like anti-poverty work, it doesn't go through like it doesn't go to libraries or like other things. It's actually quite a small budget in the slice, in the pie chart of your council tax, that goes to, for example, roads or footpaths and so on, compared to the increasing and big costs of maintaining the adult social care system, and of course our schools, and like very important things such as education. So that's something that I found very difficult personally, is like dealing with just understanding and dealing with the budget and the choices involved within it.
That comprehension piece is really important, though, isn't it? Because I think people perceive that their council tax goes up every year by a few percent. Yeah, but what they don't do is they neglect all the years when if it doesn't go up, or more generally goes up by less than inflation as well. And so if you compare, I don't know, I do this quite a lot at HTC, but you compare the council tax in real terms, like 10 years ago at HTC, it's about 10% lower than it is today, but people think they're paying more and more and more, which, combined with, like you said, the cost of government funding cuts with another local government settlement, talking about 6.5% increase in local government in time, which inflation has been much higher than that as well. So that's going to another real terms decline. People just don't understand the financial pressures that councils are under. 1 in 5 councils is on the edge of going bust, or struggling against going bust. And it's just a difficult time, isn't it? I can't imagine what it must have been like 20 years ago. I'm sure 20 years ago they must have complained about they didn't have many resources then, but it must have been like a golden age compared with today. Because and that's it. It's always making difficult choices. People just say, oh, you should cut back, you should make cut salaries, you could make people redundant, you can do less, more efficiency changes. But that's been going on for 13 years of austerity now. And the truth is, in lots of areas, we've cut off all the fat and we're down to the bone, and that's the problem, is that actually, county council is difficult to get your head around because it's massive, but HTC is actually a very lean organization. It has one of the lowest precepts in the country. and delivers lots of services. Now, maybe those services aren't as good as they used to be 10 or 20 years ago when they had more money, but they still deliver, for £155 on average a year for HDC, you get a lot of stuff done, but people don't perceive that. They see their total council tax bill, they see that increases, and they think it's not value for money, when actually I think HDC at least is exceptional value for money, and county council is completely swamped by social care, isn't it? That's the truth of it. And fireways to a much lesser extent.
Yeah, definitely. I think what happens as well, which a lot of people perhaps don't think about it this way, and that's something that I only started thinking about after working in the charitable sector, is that over time and over the last 10 years or so, government is delegating a lot of, I guess, responsibility that used to be the state's responsibility, like some decades ago, to the third sector. So, for example, take an example of legal aid and cuts to legal aid. Now, what is happening? People still need legal advice. They still need debt advice or immigration advice, but it's mainly the voluntary and charitable sector providing a lot of this advice in many areas. That's just an example. And who funds those charities and volunteering groups and so on? A lot of them are funded through like local governments, like community grants. Like, for example, Cambridge City Council has community grants to some charitable organizations. It's funded by philanthropy, by donations, which are again like taking from people's like personal income, which is like a great thing to do, like to contribute to charity. But what happened is that a lot of the functions that used to be delivered by the states, like a few decades ago, are actually delivered by a very a third sector that's under pressure and relies on philanthropic local government funding, which comes like partly from central government or donations. And it's really not sustainable, because you can't delegate all the responsibilities to the volunteers will deal with the food bank. We're not responsible to tackle poverty anymore, like let's say as the state. We're just like having have a huge growth in food banks, which are again funded by donations, by some local businesses in some cases, some big business in some cases, but also some of them are funded by local council community grants as well. So it's kind of putting, it's taking the money from, I guess, national level, and it's putting it in a little bit in the local level, and then kind of like trying to provide the same service through the volunteering sector, which is really, with increased demand, it's really not sustainable. I can't comment about all the different charitable sectors, but I used to volunteer as an immigration advisor. It is just not sustainable to have something that, has to be professional, accredited advice run on a volunteer, unpaid basis for like a lot of people. It's just not, not how it should work, for instance. So that's my view on that. Should I take some of the?
So Anthony, who is, if you don't follow Anthony on Twitter, you really should, because he is the most sage-like person in the whole of Cambridgeshire politics, and one of my favourite people, actually. I went to a course that he ran in Cambridge recently, and it was one of the most illuminating 2 or 3 hours of my life, I think. So Anthony says that council tax was meant to be a temporary measure to replace the hated poll tax in 1990, which just goes to show you that's how local government works, is you have these knee-jerk reactions. That's been in place for, I guess, judging by Anthony's date, for 33 years, and we've got a system that doesn't really work, isn't really fair, it penalizes people quite badly as well. I think some of the way the council tax bands are rating is absurd and ridiculous, and there would be much better and fairer methods of taxation. But I guess the experiences of the Conservatives, which basically ended Margaret Thatcher in the early 90s, they don't want to repeat that, do they? And so we just leave bad systems in place. Same as the whole of the local government reorganisation in 1974, which gave us all these strange councils. That was mucked up, 50 years ago now, 50 years this year, and nobody ever fixed it as well. And so, yeah, a big overhaul of council tax and local democracy is well overdue, I think, but it would take a very brave administration or government to do that.
We have boundary changes now, so it's controversial enough as it is.
Yeah. So I'm completely in favour of local government reform, and a reform of the whole of the taxation system as well. There were some figures late last year that showed that people earning about 40,000 and between 100 and 125,000 are paying more tax relatively incremental tax than people on like 150,000, 160,000, and that's clearly bonkers and not justified at all. So reform of all taxation would also be on my list, and we might have a new government this year, so let's see what they're gonna do when they get elected, or if they get elected.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the council tax, because I was reflecting this recently, like, after I moved from Cambridge to Huntington, and like how much you pay and for what, and how the same property, that I'm in Huntington will be a different band in Cambridge, because, as the comments say, the council tax bills relate to house prices from the 90s as well. So you can definitely, like, if you think about this, like, I have the same income, so I get the same allowance from the council, I have the same income from my job, from my non-council job, and I would have paid like significantly more, because I'll be on a different band if I was in a different place than here, but I have the same income to pay the tax with. So like, it's definitely not, it's not like a progressive tax system in that sense, because it's really like a postcode lottery. It depends like where you live, it depends like how like how the property was valued in the 90s. Of course, it's very different if you live in a flat compared to in a house, and like the location and so on. So I was thinking about this recently, and I thought like, I would have paid so much more for the same property, because we banned it differently. It's just because in the 90s or whenever like this was built, like probably it was like very cheap. It was like very cheap on the market, so it stays band A forever, I guess.
That's not even a wealth thing. If you look at in terms of district councils, the most expensive council tax by far, is in the poorest region. So Fenland council tax payers pay about £90 more on average per year for Fenland's district council tax than people live in Huntingdonshire, despite the fact that if you compare the demographics of those two areas, Fenland in general is much worse off in average. Obviously, there's pockets of wealth and deprivation in both areas, but on average, Fenland has much higher levels of deprivation in Huntingdonshire, but also pays much more council tax, and I would argue also has probably fewer services delivered by those local councils as well, because they don't have lots of parks, they don't have lots of leisure centres. I don't think, although I'm not an expert on Fenland politics.
Well, we won't sort the council tax alternative to council tax today, but
We'll do that next week.
shall we take well, in the new year, it's a goal, because it links nicely to the next question and that I had today, which is, what are your hopes or new year resolutions in council, for the council, your councillor work for 2024?
So I've had an interesting time. So we're about to hit the third year of a 4-year council term at county council, but for most of that time I was the chair of the county council for almost 2 years, which I think it doesn't officially put constraints on the way you behave and the way you act, but it forces you to be a lot less political and a lot less radical as well, because you can't speak on debates as well. It hasn't really stopped my social media output, but I'm more, I love the joint administration, but I'm increasingly a critical voice of all of local politics as well. And so I guess at county council, where I'm a backbencher, that's part of my role as well, is to be a slight, not a dissenter, but to be the conscience of the joint administration at county council. And so I try and pull strings behind the scenes, because I don't have much of a voice or influence elsewhere these days. I'm just a regular councillor. So it's that. I think I always want to be an independent guy. Again, at district council, where I'm on the cabinet, I have a more of a senior and influential role, and so I like to be an independent voice and try and be the voice of the people, even that means sometimes you're at odds with people over increased charges or increased taxation, but I'm always want to be doing difficult things for the good of people, even if they're not popular. So I want to try and be less popular this year.
Well, that's
which is not a good re-election strategy ever.
No, definitely not a good re-election strategy, but probably to be fun in council.
But I'd much rather have a 4-year term in which I did the right things and the things which were best for the district or for the county, and then not get re-elected, than sit there and try and only do popular things. So I think that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem at HDC in the past, is that people have been unwilling to take the big steps that would have the most influence. And I think the new joint administration, relatively new, well, halfway through the joint administration at district council this year, has been keener to try and do those more kind of revolutionary or incremental step things that make a difference, but we need to do more of them. I think I want to be more radical in all of politics is my New Year's resolution. How about you, Alex? What's your resolution for the year?
Well, a lot of them are related to getting highway stuff done. So I have one footpath. I have to tell about this one footpath in my ward in Abbey. And it was on the list for resurfacing about 2 years ago, and it was done. So like there's like an entire, like it's Barnwell Road, it's an entire street, like on one side nice footpath, but then the contractors, and like I won't get started on like whether I think the service should be in-house or not, or how the different contractors are doing, because it's not the place now, the New Year resolutions. But they left out the worst bit of the footpath. So they literally did the work and they stopped and they left like a little bit of the footpath. And that was like over a year ago. So I hope in 2024, because they said like, well, the contractors will be back to repair this, the part that they, I don't know, missed or left. I don't know, the worst potholed part. So I do hope that in 2024 I'll get my New Year resolutions and that whole stretch of the footpath will be done, because I think that's really really unacceptable. But yeah, I do have like quite a few of those. When when it's finally done, you feel that you have won at life after like 2 years of
Yeah.
supporting it, which again it's like an issue of course of funding, but I think it's also the issue of like how we organize certain things like that as well. But yeah, on the serious, no, it's very serious. It's probably like what if what I want to kind of deliver is like actually actually be able to deliver what I said it will be done. And it's really frustrating when like you do like I don't know, I meet residents like, oh yeah, this is on the list, this will be redone, and then you get all the complaint emails, and rightfully so, people saying like, well, they missed the worst bit of the footpath. And I can't say anything about it, that you're right, like you're right, it was not a job well done. Like I can't say anything else. I mean, I know we're supposed to defend somehow our record, but in some cases I just can't defend it. So I would say yes, you are, if the resident is right, you're right, and I'll try to to make it better. But yeah, so apart from the ever all the problems with highways that we always have, and like I think things are getting better, like at least local in my area, but there's a long way to go. I think in 2024 I just hope, like one of my, I guess, broader New Year resolutions is I just hope the debate, in not only in the council, but the level of debate is more aligned with like the debate not hate, I guess, motion and principles, and that there's less, I guess, abuse in politics in general. Because I do think like, although like I don't really, not that I don't mind, but like I kind of still persist at it, and I'm still like commenting on social media and stuff, I do think it puts so many people off, especially like younger people, especially women, but not only, people who are not really like used to politics. Like we won't have diversity in politics if some of us behave in the way that we do.
How many? So that's a good point though, because I just think that over the last 4 years that lots of my colleagues on both sides have retreated from social media because of the amount of abuse they get. I mean, you and I are two of the still prominent voices. I'm on there all the time because I actually enjoy the scrutiny, and it guides my thinking quite often. I like having to justify every single decision I make, because it keeps me honest, I think. So I like doing that. But you see fewer and fewer of us, especially, I mean, the Twitter platform, I guess, is in decline, I guess, a bit. But in general, you don't hear these voices anymore that you did hear 4 years ago. And I think that's a pity that people move away from commenting on social media because it grinds you down and sometimes is straight offensive. People are offensive and horrible sometimes as well, and that's difficult. So definitely setting the right tone in debate, although I don't think many people actually listen to county council debates. I think at district council in HDC we've got the balance right, because I think those are productive, healthy and respectful debates. County council, they quite often just ends up being a talking to. I'd just like to see more collaboration in solving problems. It's like, because I cannot believe that on most issues the party politic people on each side of the party political divide have genuinely different answers to solving those problems, and that's the issue for me. Talking about problems and people sticking inside their lanes just makes the whole process unproductive and slightly tedious to be a part of as well. So I'd like to see more coming together to solving problems. I think that doesn't work at Westminster, it doesn't work at county council, it works a bit better at district council, but there's still improvements to be made. So I'd like to see more collaboration and cooperation in making real difference for people's lives.
Yeah, I think it's a good resolution as well. Well, I think my personal view, I guess, is that it's not helped by the first past the post system, that like ultimately everyone was there gearing up for the next round of elections. They're thinking in terms of first past the post, in terms of attributing like whatever was done in their area to the party rather than themselves, which in a lot of the cases, I mean, of course you do get, if you're a party candidate like myself, you do get elected, like, you know, because of, you know, the people vote for the party as well. Like, it's true, like I can't say like, oh, you know, everyone voted for me as a person. No, like probably majority, the vast majority of people voted for the party because I was a candidate for a particular party, and there's the truth of it. But then when you are in council and what you do, it is kind of like based on your own like kind of skill and ability. And of course you can be trained by the party, you can get a lot of resources from the party, but yeah, there's often a balance in terms of like what you are able to do just because you're very annoying and persistent as a councillor, and what were you able to do because you had a particular party, whether you're like Lib Dem, Conservative, Green, or Labour, or any of the other parties. It's really interesting. I think there's a balance. It's not everything about, you know, the party or the person, unless you're independent, of course, like yourself, in which case it's you can attribute all the wins, all the local wins to yourself and your own work.
Well, no, it's not. But I don't even want to do that. I want to genuinely say that, you know, if we find ourselves in opposition at any stage and a Conservative administration do good things, I'm a independent backbench in opposition. I want to be able to genuinely applaud them as well. And so that on occasion I have voted with them at both councils, not very often, when I think they're doing the right thing. So I'd like more of that, more of being able to be independently minded as well. So the other issue with the whole toxicity point is that we've got a general election coming up probably in the next 12 months. Yeah. And you can feel that pressure rising as well, because, you know, the interest in local politics in all politics is raising. And obviously candidates are sometimes stirring things up as well, which is all good, actually. It's good for business because we want more scrutiny. We want more interest. Part of the problem with local politics is people don't pay enough attention to it as well. But you get bizarre stuff like, so for example, the Conservative candidate for the new St Neots constituency is Anthony Brown, who as MP for South Cambs has made lots of political beef about South Cambs' plans to build 50,000 houses. Yeah, and he's been a massive opponent of that. And now he's part of a government that is proposing to build 150,000 houses in the same area, and he's completely silent. So that kind of party loyalty, yeah, over the concerns of residents just frankly makes me sick as well. And I'm never going to be part of that, which is one of the reasons I haven't joined a political party, because I want to be loyal to my residents. And I know you can do both things, Alex, and that you're a member of a political party and you are loyal to your residents. But too often I just see political people putting their parties first and not doing what's good for the party rather than what's good for the people. Now, I don't think you fall into that trap at all yet, but it happens to people sometimes. So that's that I find that very frustrating as being part of political administrations, you know, with political parties in it, is that I tried to be an independent voice.
Well, I think on the issue of like house building and development, probably we need in the new year, maybe like the first topic on Friday, politics, coffee, and buses. We can speak about actually Michael Gove's proposals and the development, because I think like often it's actually very difficult to balance like the different arguments on that. And often you see so many, like both at local and national level, so many politicians who are very opposed and like the main campaigners against development in their local area, while, you know, when they're winning their seat, whatever that is, council or MP, and then being like completely pro, you know, any amount of development after, or the other way around, people who are like really kind of pro house building, pro development, pro expansion, and then once they're elected and realize that particular development schemes are not very popular in their area, then they completely turn ideologically. So I think there's some very interesting examples in politics where people have shifted on the spectrum of like being very pro development as opposed to being completely opposed to any kind of development in general.
As you're starting to find out, Huntingdonshire is a really rural area, isn't it? There's lots of it. There's lots of rural villages, yeah, who could be wiped away by building 150,000 houses, and it's easy for those people. And as their representatives, I represent a largely rural constituency or division at county council. It'd be easy for me to campaign with all of those people and say we don't want any houses built. But also because I'm at their parish councils and I talk to residents all the time, you see that the real problem in that young people who grow up in those villages, there aren't any houses for them to move into and have to move out of the area. And so you have to have a balance. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough social housing or affordable housing, and it's difficult. But let's save that one for the new year, I think.
Yes, I do have many thoughts on this. I went to actually a conference a couple of months ago on which is like kind of part of labor. It's called the Labor Housing Group, which spoke about rural housing and different models that are like, because often when we speak about housing, we speak either like big development, am I for or against big development, or there's so many models of actually expanding affordable housing, but at the local level and without having this kind of, like huge development arguments, and actually doing it more locally with more community buy-in. But I will save those thoughts for the new year, because I did have a lot of notes from that event. Shall we end with this live stream today with the question about buses? Any thoughts on relaunching a bus campaign?
I think we should. I think it's something we should really work on. So during 2024, I talked to the providers. I think if you look at Huntingdonshire and Cambridgeshire, the biggest provider is Stagecoach. We also have Vector, it runs Ting, and we also have Whippet. The only people I didn't talk to is Jews, who run some of the bus services as well. But I might go and talk to those as well. So I've talked to the people who operate most of the buses in Huntingdonshire, and I think we've got a pretty, and you've been at some, you went to the Stagecoach meeting as well, didn't you, as well? And we've got a pretty good idea about what those problems are. We might disagree on some of the problems because they're commercial companies, but in general I think we've got a good view on the struggles that they have. You are a very active bus user. I think we need to talk to more bus users as well, so talking to the Cambridge area bus users group would be interesting as well. But I think pushing on this whole public transportation thing, it's a really important thing. There was a long thread by the CBG bus users group on Twitter yesterday, which we were tagged in, which about an article about a bus service between, I think, Cambridge and Saffron Walden, with headline figures of £250 subsidy per person, which those things demonstrate that what we're doing currently isn't working. And that's not, we haven't taken a real step towards having a more working bus network this year, despite talking endlessly about it with the STZ stuff as well. So absolutely happy to campaign for better buses. I want to campaign for better Ting coverage in Huntingdonshire as well, because lots of my rural villages, Abbottsley, Wesley and Gransden, because of a fate of geography, they're the wrong side of the A428, don't have Ting coverage and therefore don't have any bus services. So when I'm standing up in those parish councils and trying to justify why Nick Johnson is increasing his bus precept, it's really hard to tell people, oh, you're going to pay another £24 a year on your council tax for buses when you don't have any bus services as well. So I'm happy to campaign on those things. The problem of rural bus provision is a really difficult one to solve, because it can only be done with subsidy. It can't be done commercially. I'm fairly confident in saying that. So yeah, definitely we will continue to talk about buses and perhaps do something more coherent.
Yes, I've tried more bus routes as well, but I think my main, like every single time I go to Cambridge, like I'm going today, every single time I'm on that busway, I'm thinking like it would be so much better, especially at commute times, if we had like Huntingdon to St. Ives direct and then St. Ives on the busway, like especially on the commute times, because yes, in the afternoon or like in the evening, or of course people stop in the way, people stop in Hartford or like in Witten, but then the commute times is literally people getting from Huntington, and then like it's pretty much no activity on most of the bus stops until St. Ives. And I'm really thinking like it would really help to have, it would incentivize many more people to actually commute by bus if it took you 15 minutes and not like an hour between Huntington and St. Ives, especially if there's traffic. But I'll see like how many bus routes I can do that I haven't done before in the county, but I've done recently the 305. Have you been on the 305?
Where does that go to?
Goes to Warboys, well, Chatteris, and then from
I
Huntingdon.
have been on 305 because last year I did the Pathfinder walk and I got stuck in Warboys at one stage and I had to get the bus home. So I have taken the 305, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was not. It was. I mean, it was reliable. No, it showed up on time, which is I didn't expect, but it was. Yeah, a new one I have tried recently. Apart from like the usual, usual one to Peterborough, usual one to Cambridge, and yeah, of course, the stagecoach ones that goes to Cambridge to St. Neots as well, which I'm a regular customer of as well. All right. So, what final question? What bus route in the county you pledge to try in 2024 in the new year?
I'd like to do some of the Whippet ones as well. So the 18, I think, is the one I'd like to try. I'd like to do the 18 and the 66. Really enjoyed talking to the Whippet guys. Really enjoyed what they're trying to do. Genuinely believe that they're trying to do the right thing. But they've had their struggles this year, so I'd like to support Whippet more, I think. So I'd like to go on a bus tour, like do the circuit of Huntingdonshire as much as we can on Whippet.
Yeah, we should. I mean, the 66 I use quite regularly. Is the one that goes to God Manchester, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I do use that one. But yeah, so there's the 400. I haven't tried this one yet. Like the 400 that goes to Kimbolton. So maybe that's what we can do in the new.
I want to see your list of all the buses in Huntingdonshire and the ones that you've ticked off this year.
Well, I have a list of all the well, all towns, villages, and hamlets of the whole constituency. So I can link the spreadsheet to all the bus routes as well.
I need to see the map. I need to see the map next time. Not next time, but sometime I need to see the map.
All right then. Well, we'll end the live stream here. We have a plan. We have a plan to go on a bus tour in the new year. So hopefully we'll document this. Maybe in the next live stream. Maybe not at 7:30, but we can document some of. We can do a live stream on the bus next Friday. But meanwhile, wishing you all a very happy new year until we see each other again. And yes, do share in the comments your best and worst moments of Cambridgeshire politics in 2023.
Yeah.
So see you in the new year. See you in 2024.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye.
Bye.